Hello everyone, warm greetings. I welcome all of you to class 10 English class. The chapter that I have brought for you today is BHOLI, written by K.A. Abbas. Before I give you the details of the chapter BHOLI, I would like to tell you something about the author. So let us get started, children. Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, also known as K.A. Abbas, was an Indian film director, screenwriter, novelist, and a journalist in the Urdu, Hindi, and English languages. A multilingual, isn't it? He won 4 National Film Awards in India. National Film Awards are very prestigious awards given to people associated with the film industry. Okay? And internationally, his films won the Palme d'Or Grand Prize at the Cannes Film Festival out of 3 Palme d'Or nominations and the Crystal Globe at the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival. As a director and screenwriter, Khwaja Ahmad Abbas is considered one of the pioneers of Indian parallel or neo-realistic cinema. And as a screenwriter, he is also known for writing Raj Kapoor's best film. So his reputation lies on the fact that he worked with Raj Kapoor. And not only that, he wrote, dialogues for Raj Kapoor's best films. So that is the achievement of this great film director. Okay. So let us start the story. The story opens up with the introduction of a little girl named Sulekha. She was called BHOLI for being a simpleton. This was so because some part of her brain had got damaged due to an injury during her childhood. She stammered and had pockmarks on her face, which she got when she had contracted smallpox at the age of 2. So this is how the story begins. We find that there is a little girl named Sulekha in the story and she is the central character or the protagonist of the story. She was named BHOLI. Why? Because she was a very simple girl. Okay, so that's the reason she was given a name. Usually we give to people who are very simple like BHOLI, BHOLA and so on. Now, when she was a kid, she met with 2 unfortunate incidents which had impacted her brain and her face. Okay, and these incidents were when she was young, she contracted a disease that is smallpox when she was only 2, and that left pock marks, the big, the big marks on her face, which made her ugly. Not only that, she had fallen down when she was a child, and due to that, some part of her brain was damaged. So, all in all, we come to know that BHOLI is a little girl who has suffered a lot even in her childhood. So, this is what we understand. She was the laughing stock for everyone. Her father Ramlal was a Nambardar. He had 3 sons and 4 daughters, BHOLI being the youngest of all. Ramlal was always worried about her as it seemed impossible to marry her with her having an ugly face and a dumb mind. So, in the next part of the story, what happens is that she was nagged and mocked by everyone in the family and the neighborhood because of her looks and because of her mental traits. So that made her a laughing stock. Laughing stock means a person who is mocked by others. Her father was a numberdar by profession. And what is the role of a numberdar? Let me tell you, in the British times, numberdars were appointed by the British officials for collecting revenues and taxes from the villagers. So as such, her father Ramlal, he was a numberdar. And the meaning is that they were from a well-to-do family or well-to-do background. Ramlal had 3 sons and 4 daughters, and Bholi was youngest. She was the youngest. And Ramlal was very worried because of Bholi's characters, the way she looked and the mental traits that she had, that made it very tough for Ramlal to get her married. And he knew that it would be a big trouble to marry Bholi off to someone because it was doubtful whether she would get a proper match. Okay. So this was the trouble, this was the pain of Bholi's father Ramlal. One day, the Tehsildar visited their village to inaugurate a girls' primary school. He persuaded Ramlal to send his daughters to school. Ramlal's wife suggested to send Bholi to school, although she was against sending girls to school because no boy would marry such a girl. She reasoned that as Bholi had no chance of getting married, so she could go to school. So look at the audacity that Bholi started facing while she was a child. She was not sent to school because she was a girl, and as such girls were never sent to the school. Okay, in those times. And here we find that boys of the family, they went to good schools, they studied, and it was ensured that they got educated. But the same thing was not there for girls. So there is a huge gender discrimination which is taking place in the story, which we find that the parents are discriminating among the sons and daughters of the family. But there is a contradiction in the story when Bholi's mother, she was completely against sending girls to the school, but still she agreed to send Bholi to school. Why? Because Bholi was ugly and there was no chance of her getting married. That way it did not bother her in any way whether she studied or not. So she said that let her go to school and let her learn something. Whatever happens to her is something which was not that very important for her parents. And this is how her schooling began. And then this Tehsildar who had visited the village, he persuaded, he told, he encouraged Ramlal that he should send his daughters to school. Why? Because that will send a good and strong message across the village community. Because that would send a message that girls should also be educated. So this is how Bholi started going to school. Okay. In the beginning, Bholi was frightened to leave her house, but when, for the first time in her life, she was dressed up and her dress was washed and oiled, she felt that she was to visit a better place. In the school, she met a teacher who was very kind and polite to her. She encouraged her to study and speak with confidence. This filled hope in Bholi, and she began to go to school every day. So this is what happens in the next part. We find that Bholi was sent to the school for the first time in her life, and when she went there, she was very, very scared and nervous. She was not very happy to go to the school. And as her father was dragging her on the street, taking her to the school, she was crying, she was in tears, she did not want to go, and she kept on shouting, "No, Papa, no, 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 this is what has happened." But then she had been given good clothes, her hair was washed and oiled, and then she was dressed up in a proper manner and was taken to the school. There at the school, she went to the principal's office. The principal completed all the formalities of admission, and then she was sent to the classroom where she met her teacher for the first time. The teacher brings about a change in Bholi's thought process. The teacher was very kind and polite, and that was the first impression that Bholi had of her class teacher. And she immediately loved her class teacher. She wanted to speak with everyone, the students who were present in Bholi's class. But then she did not have courage. She did not have that kind of confidence to speak. And Bholi's teacher, she asked her name, and she could not say. She started crying and she just somehow mumbled, "My name is Bholi." So this was the kind of girl that Bholi was when she went to the school for the first time. But the encouragement, the motivation, the kindness that she received from her teacher changed her. How did that change her? She was filled with hope for the first time in life. Throughout her life, we find her being neglected. She was not taken care of by her parents. They ignored her almost all the time. But then, when she went to the school, the teacher took her into her notice, and that brought about a change in Bholi's, disposition. She became confident. She started getting hopeful, and that was the turning point in the life of Bholi. And from that day onwards, there was no looking back. She went to school every day and learned whatever the teacher taught her. Years passed, and her village upgraded into a small town with small facilities like a cotton mill, a cinema, and the primary school being converted into a secondary school. One day, Bholi's parents decided to marry her to a lame old man who was a widower but was rich and had not demanded any dowry. They thought it to be the best marriage proposal for their dumb daughter and fixed up her marriage. So now what happens? Bholi turned into a young woman. As you can assume that she was not very attractive to look at, but she had gained knowledge. She had become an elegant lady with deep knowledge and insight, right? And that was her teacher's doing. And years passed. There were so many changes that came in her village. The village turned into a small town with some facilities that came there. For an example, a cotton mill was established. There was a cinema hall that was built, and the primary school where Bholi started her schooling turned into a secondary school. Now the question arises, what's a primary and a secondary school? I hope you must be knowing that primary classes 1 to 5, these are primary classes, and secondary classes 9. So we can say that from 6 to 10 usually we have middle school, 6 to 8 middle school, and then 9 and 10 secondary school. So her school, which was up to class 5, that also developed, and now it was functioning till class 10. So this is the change that has come in the school, and there are certain other changes which have come in the village. The village has developed, and then Bholi has also turned into a young woman. And then the parents decide that she should be married off, and they chose a groom who was an old man, almost double her age, and was lame and was a widower. What's the meaning of widower? A man whose wife has died. So they chose this kind of groom for Bholi because they knew that no one who was a young and bright man would marry Bholi. Perhaps that was the reason which made them select this old man as Bholi's groom. Okay, but then there was one thing, he was rich. uh, Bholi's would-be husband was rich, and he had not demanded any dowry from Ramlal, and that was perhaps the reason why he had chosen him for his daughter. Okay, and the marriage was fixed up. Now the question arises, it must come to your mind that why didn't Bholi say anything? Why did Bholi agree to the marriage? She did not say. She was educated. She could have said no. She could have put forward her thoughts and ideas. But she refrained from doing all that. So we are going to examine that in the next part of the story. On the wedding day, the bridegroom arrived with great pomp and show, which filled Ramlal with joy. The groom discovered that Bholi had pockmarks and demanded dowry in return for marrying her. He demanded a sum of 5,000 rupees. Ramlal begged for mercy, even placed his turban in Bishambar's feet, but Bishambar Nath did not agree. So there is a great drama that takes place, a great Indian drama we can say that takes place on the wedding day. The wedding day was arranged, everything was done according to the traditions, and the great day arrived when the bridegroom came to Bholi's house to marry her. Okay, so the bridegroom came with the marriage procession, and there was a great pomp and show. Pomp and show, it was a wonderful marriage procession. People were all decked up, dressed up, they were enjoying, they were making merry, and so was Bishambar Nath. Bishambar Nath is the name of Bholi's bridegroom. Okay, but when there is a ceremony called Varmala in a marriage, okay, in a Hindu marriage, in which the garlands are exchanged. The bride, she gives a garland to the groom, and vice versa. So while this ceremony was taking place, suddenly Bholi lifted her veil, slipped back. Veil, ghungat. Her veil slipped back, and due to that, for the first time, Bishambar Nath had a look at his would-be bride, at his would-be wife. And when he saw that Bholi had pockmarks on her face, that made him a bit disappointed and angry. And now there is a turning point in the story. Now what happens? Bishambar Nath, he places a demand to Bholi's father, and he says that he must get a sum of 5,000 rupees as dowry, and if that is not given to him, he refuses to marry an ugly girl like Bholi. Ramlal was in a fix. He did not know what to do, and he begged for mercy. He just placed his turban, which is a sign of a man's reputation, on Bishambar's feet, and he asked him to be merciful. He asked him to be kind and lower the amount from 5,000 to maybe some other amount. But Bishambar Nath was so cruel and mean-minded that he did not agree. And he said that 5,000 is the sum that he must get in return for marrying an ugly girl like Bholi. Ramlal had to give the money in order to save both his family's honor and his daughter's marriage. Bholi could not bear all this and refused to marry a greedy old man. People accused her of being shameless. The wedding party returned. The marriage ceremony ended without Bholi getting married. So this is what happens. There is a big drama that has taken place. There is a tragic end to this drama. Ramlal was about to give that kind of money to Bishambar Nath for his daughter's marriage. But then that did not end the story. The story did not end here. Bholi, who was an educated and sensitive young woman, she decided to take a stand at this time. When the marriage was being arranged by her parents, she had remained silent. She did not say anything. But now she thought that she could not tolerate this injustice anymore, and she spoke her mind. And what did she do? She refused to marry this greedy old man who was double her age. And she said that she can live her life like a spinster, an unmarried girl. So she decides, she takes a very strong life changing decision from here, and she says that she does not want to marry a greedy man. That surprises and shocks all the people, all the villagers, and some of them, because of their ignorance and backward thinking, they start accusing the Bholi of being shameless, of being characterless. Right? This is what happens when sometimes young women take a tough stand. They are criticized by all. Now, the wedding party that returned without any marriage ceremony taking place, and Bholi did not get married. She remained a spinster. Her father was surrounded by grief and said that now no one would marry her, and what would she do in future? To this, she replied that she would take care of her parents when they grew old and would teach in her school. Her teacher, who was quietly watching all this, felt proud of her decision. So this is how the story comes to an end. There is a dramatic as well as a very bold end given to the story written by Abbas Sahab. So he says that her father was surrounded by grief. He was grief stricken. Why? Because the marriage procession had returned empty handed, and Bholi was still a spinster, and her father was worried about her future. But Bholi, she replied politely that she would take care of her parents because all her brothers and sisters had settled down. They had their own lives. So now she would take care of her parents and she would remain with them till they were alive. And not only that, she also decided to be a teacher in the same school where she had studied, where she had got educated. Her teacher was one of the guests among the villagers, and she was one of the guests at the marriage ceremony. She was watching the entire episode, all the unfurling of events quietly. And when Bholi takes a strong decision, she was proud of Bholi. She was proud of Bholi for the fact that she had taken a right and bold decision. So her education has borne fruit. So this is what happens when people get educated. People get a right, or they are able to choose between the right and wrong. And that makes a difference. That takes them to a higher standard of living. Bholi may not have got married, but marriage is not all. You can live your life in a different way also, in a deep, fulfilling way also. And Bholi decided to take that step because of the harsh experience that she had in her marriage ceremony. So with this, the story comes to an end. With this, we have come to the end of the story, and I believe that you people must have enjoyed this wonderful story, which depicts the traditions and sometimes the vices of the Indian society. Isn't it? And I also hope that you must have taken a lesson, learnt a lesson. A strong message is given by K.A. Abbas in this story that education is a vehicle of change. It brings about different experiences and brings about a drastic change in the life of a person. This is what happened to Bholi. Bholi rose from a simpleton to to an educated woman, to an enlightened woman. So this is the change that has been made possible only because of the education that she got at the school. And not only that, the story very acutely highlights the vices which are there in the society, which needs to be reformed. So, all in all, it is a story which is realistic in nature and sends a strong message to its readers. Bye bye, my dear children. Take care.